power on.
Accessing historical database. Year 2020. The tech giants become aware of the greatest threat to their corporatist domination. An obscure science and tech podcast becomes a major factor in a peaceful open source revolt against the military Silicon Valley industrial complex. The podcast, Sovryn Tech. Its host, Dr. Brian Sovryn. The tech giants tried to stop Sovryn Tech. They can't.
Woo, the man of tomorrow is here. And, sorry. I was going to do something terrible, Ellen.
You're already being bad.
I know. I was going to say, it's like, all right, you can get up from it. I'm sorry. We won't go there. Anyway.
Can your listeners not handle it?
I don't. Well,
should they not know what goes on in this studio?
I can barely handle it. I don't know how anyone else is going. If they only knew.
Parental controls on your listeners.
Yeah, right. You know, if this was on a Spotify or something, maybe they'd control what you could hear, you know, and if it just didn't fit in with the agenda, I don't know. Well, anyway, why I went far.
The agenda.
The agenda. Yeah, they, them, those. Anyway, no, I went far, but we will touch on that in an upcoming story that we're going to cover in this episode. But anyway, Ellen, welcome to the show. Woo.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here.
It hasn't been too long since you've been on.
Only a few weeks.
Yeah.
But it was so much fun, I wanted to come back.
Actually, you know, earlier today, in fact, I'll probably read it on the air, in the Sovryn Tech Telegram group, which I know you keep a very, very voyeuristic eye on. We got complimented on, because the last time you were on was episode 375. I think this is number 378. And we might read into some of those comments to hopefully justify other things we're going to talk about, because for some reason, every time you come on this show, it seems like I end up talking about aliens. When I'm like the last guy to even bother, you know?
Oh, I wonder why that is. It's not like you actually are really interested in aliens. In fact, you know, why don't you tell the listeners what it is that you're reading right now?
Nice segue. That is good. That was really good. But I'm not gonna tell them what I'm reading right now. not that book. No. I'll tell them about the book I was reading before that book, but I'm not going to talk about that book.
All right. Well, let's just say it involves aliens.
Wow.
Multiple races.
I might as well talk about it now.
Well, I'm not going into any details. They don't need to know how terrible it is when you talk about it with me.
So, okay. So you and I, you know, when we have free time or whatever, you know, or personal time, whatever that takes shape as, right? We'll listen to Audible. We talk about this a lot. You know, we'll listen to audiobooks or something, or I don't know, whatever. You've been watching a lot of Harlan Ellison videos lately, actually. I don't.
Yeah, I'm just starting to introduce myself to him and some of the content that he's created. Like, I listened to a collection of his short stories recently, and he's done multiple interviews on the Tom Schneider Show, which I find hilarious and entertaining. And
I played one of those actually in a recent episode.
You did?
Yeah, it's the 374 or something like that. Anyway.
Yeah, but there are several oothers. And I love all of them. I just think they're so funny. And he's got such a rich personality with so many stories.
No, it's true. It's true. I want to talk more about that in a second. But to get into what we're reading, because I want to hear what you're reading as well, beyond that, beyond Harlan. So you kind of gave one. So I guess we'll give two here all told. So the weird ass book that I am reading, and folks, I don't buy an ounce of this, so don't think, oh, the Golden Stallion's gone crazy.
It's just for fun.
This is really just for fun. Though I'll tell you, I mean, you could read a book like this, and like every sentence is a fucking story prompt. If you're like a science fiction writer, I mean, you could have a field day.
Creative
everything.
minds, I bet, would really feed on this kind of story.
Absolutely. So the book is called Dark Fleet. Hold on here. I'll pull it up. Yeah, Dark Fleet: The Secret Nazi Space Program and the Battle for the Solar System, by Len Kasten.
Can you get with that?
Oh boy, this is a hell of a book. I mean, this guy has almost. I mean, there's points where he gets into a little bit of history around World War I and World War II, and that's easy enough information to find. He quotes regularly from Wikipedia.
Direct quote? Like you look at the Wikipedia page and it's like he's reading from it?
He actually says from Wikipedia. Like he'll say that.
Wow.
Yeah, this
that
guy
is so cheap.
I know. This guy, it gets better. Oh, Len.
Well, I know you said that he's a little scant with the references. And like with World War I and II stuff, some of that you can get away with as like general knowledge.
Yeah.
But it seems like he takes that and then just goes like way out.
Well, here's the beauty.
Limb.
So what this guy's has written, I don't know, 3-4 books, something along those lines. I actually read his previous book too, Alien World Order, it's called. And it's all about like the reptilian plan to conquer the Earth or whatever the fuck. I don't even want to give it the time of day, at least not on my show. But
I think it's really great to discuss this. It gives some moments of hilarity.
Okay, well, I promise that the next book I'm going to talk about is actually worth your time, is actually worthwhile. But this book, so here's the thing, like in this book, which just came out, Dark Fleet just came out maybe a month or two ago. He constantly references his previous books. Okay. He's like, as laid out in Alien World Order. But here's the problem. Like, so I've read the previous books and he doesn't have any evidence to back up anything that he's really saying. He's basically like writing out, I mean, it reads like a Hollywood movie script. You know, it doesn't read like a really, I mean, cause there's guys out there that, you know, that are in that vein and that say some pretty wacky shit that, at least try to bolster their claims, at least try to present some evidence. Or guys that aren't so wacky. I mean, but you know, you have like Nick Redfern, Zachariah Sitchin, even, you know, Eric Von Daniken and their type.
Ancient Alien stuff.
Yeah, your Ancient Alien guys. I mean, at least some of them in some of their books, or like Philip Coppens, and they will try to present some evidence. And this guy, literally, his evidence is like websites, you know, which also present no evidence, and I go to them and, you know, and I look, obviously, or like people that have visions. So
he wrote his own set of references and then references them in this book that you're reading.
It's genius.
As if it's some sort of literary accomplishment or it's some sort of proof.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, to a not so intelligent person, I think this would hook them in. I mean, just based on like the subheaders for the subtitles for these books. But then, you know, like if you didn't bother to go back, you know, and if you didn't read his previous work, you might think that, oh, chapter 7 of Alien World Order explains everything and it has all of his evidence and all that. And because that's like this book's short. Alien World Order is an incredibly long book. It's like 15 hours as to where this this one's only like 6.
Oh, fortunate.
Yeah. And I mean, I listen at like 2.5x or so around there, 2 to 2.5x. And so I can get through that pretty quickly, you know. But yeah, I mean, it's ingenious because there's probably a lot of people who think, oh, this guy, he's got all the proof. He's got it all when it's his own fucking books.
When you read like as referenced or a reference that says like as in this book, this chapter, it's all explained. Right. That is such a shortcut to people's trust.
Now, a lot of reading. I agree. And admittedly, there are other Ancient Alien guys that will kind of pull this off, or they self-reference each other. And there's even times where it happens and it's questionable. Like there's a book called Dark Mission, which I actually think is a very worthwhile read, even though I think both Richard Hoagland and Mike Barra are both a little off their rocker. Okay. And whatever, people would think, if people knew half of what I actually think, they probably think I was off my rocker too. So whatever, misery loves company. Where they reference actually a book that I have recommended you read, and I've recommended everybody to read because I think it's a brilliant book, even though the evidence at certain point, some of it, well, you can actually tell me what you think of it, but they reference Hiram Key Revisited. Now, not the Hiram Key, that's a different book. That's a very popular book. Hiram Key Revisited is somewhat of a sequel that I think is actually far better. But anyway, Hiram Key Revisited, they will reference that in Dark Mission and treat it as evidence of wacky shit happening on the moon. And like, it's not, the evidence, because, and here's the thing, like when you actually read these other books, that they're not coming with a whole lot of evidence to the game.
Yeah, at best, these books have some really shaky ground.
Right.
Or they're making assumptions or running with a certain conclusion that doesn't have a lot of supportive evidence.
Exactly. But that's a big problem in a lot of this, shall we call UFOlogy, or, fan of UAPs. Last time you were on, that's what we talked about. And I mean, we discussed that we think, well, UAPs are a thing. And it's good to get it away from the baggage of UFOs, and, but we should be studying UAPs, and take them seriously and so on. Who knows what they actually are, but, let's take them seriously. Anyway, this is a thing that happens in these groups where it all becomes like this. Everybody's referencing each other, or a person is referencing, like even David Hatcher Childress, who I largely like, and I think he does some good work. He references back to his own fucking work. Or everybody will reference Eric Von Daniken, or everybody will reference Sitchin, which that's not a bad idea, but
so they're building this large library of references, but it's basically built on pillars of salt, is what you're saying.
Absolutely, yes. Well said. Yeah, it's all self-referential, and unless you've actually read all of these books, you don't realize, well, shit, there's not a whole lot of evidence here, and that's okay. And it's not like that's necessarily a bad thing, because some things might be very true even if you don't have a ton of evidence for it, right? I mean, and that's okay. But the problem is that I think it tricks a lot of the dum-dums into thinking there's a ton of evidence for this shit. And, and they don't realize that's not true. And anyway, I guess that's the magic of books, even when they're in audiobook form.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more about this book that you're reading right now.
Oh boy. So, it's not like it's presenting, there's some information that I guess I could call new that I've never heard anybody really claim before in this thing. This is, by the way, this is a very serious tech show, folks. All right. We will talk about tech and some science and some other good stuff a little later. But if you're a first time listener, for some reason, this is not our usual fare.
No, Brian is very educated and he always provides value.
Thank you. I'll send you some Bitcoin later. No.
My usual fee.
Anyway, yeah, this is a fucking book. So, okay, like Nazis in space, is that new territory for me? No. In fact, you've been a part of many fictional audio theater that I have done, where that's exactly what it's dealing with, is the villains in it are literally Nazis in space.
And Nazis in Antarctica.
Right. So nothing, even though this book is fresh, this book is brand new. It's not delivering anything that I haven't really ever heard before, thought about, or whatever, But yeah, this guy is basically making this huge case that there is this galactic federation that went to war with the reptilians of the Draco Empire, who are also the master race over the Greys. The Greys kind of work for them, and I think they're all from the Andromeda Galaxy. And you're at, like, instantly, like, wait, how do you know they're from the Andromeda Galaxy? Like, how do you even get evidence for that? And it's like, yeah, exactly. You can't, you dumb shit. But
it's so hard for me to listen to you describe this because you're saying the most ridiculous stuff and you're like staring at me so seriously as you say it.
Well, I mean, I wish, like, what this guy should do, and maybe this is what, like, a part of me wonders, like, what he should do is he should be writing this as novels. Like, what you read in this book would be a tremendous science fiction series that would rival The Foundation or Lensman or Dominic Flandry or any of these cats. I mean, it would really, it would rival that. It's on that scale. There's that much history. There's that much like thought that's put into all of this. I wouldn't be surprised if he put down a lot of the shit so that he could copyright it, though. And he knows what he's doing. And
let's hope that's true, because otherwise he's just fucking nuts.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's all around visions and all this other wacky crap, which, you know, remote viewing and a lot. I've actually been, I mean, this isn't an audiobook. I wish it was. I've actually been reading up some more on very legitimate, well-funded research on ESP and things like this, just, in the past few years. So I'm not like necessarily saying that kind of stuff is impossible or something like that. I mean, I don't believe it, but again, there's no, where is the hard fucking evidence,
that is a challenge for some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because a lot of history has been wiped away by time. So how can you prove it? That's
true. I mean, and there's other things too to consider that. I mean, when you're, never mind. I'm not even going to go there. Just this book is, yeah. So basically you have, I'll say quickly, you have these reptilians that they came to Earth before humans were here. They brought the dinosaurs here because the dinosaurs were their food. Venus is a Death Star, like literally like something out of Star Wars. And the Atlans came here at some point and founded Atlantis, and then they went to war with the reptilians. They lost, and that's why the continent sunk. And then maybe a tribe of them ran off to the moon, but the reptilians already have a lunar moon base. The Nazis went to the moon in 1942, and they have a moon base there. It is interesting. He does get into something I've talked about many times on my show, which is Alternative 3. Which was a documentary, or it was the final episode of a documentary series from the 70s called Science Report. He claims that like it's actual footage. When no, you can actually, we know the models that were used for this fucking footage of that supposedly the claim from Science Report was that okay. See, I could talk a whole episode about this shit. You got me started. I
just wanted to know about the book, but please continue. Alternative 3. All
right. So there's actually a book by Lee something. I forget his name. That also goes into all this. But there was this the show called Science Report, kind of like Cosmos, but it was meant to be more of a weekly thing that was done on British public television, or what equated to public television for them. I mean, the BBC is effectively government. Anyway, that doesn't matter. They didn't
use James Burke?
No, they had this other guy who, you took seriously, and it was a serious show, and it was just laying out. I mean, it was, frankly, in many ways, it's kind of like Sovryn Tech, just from the 70s and on TV. And they would, do interviews, and they would, lay stuff out. It was very straight-laced. It wasn't far out or wacky or anything like that at all.
That sounds very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, basic, but interesting, And so the show was getting canned, and they had their last episode was going to be like on April 1st. And so the producers of the show said, "Oh, let's have fun with this. Like if they're going to can us, we're going to have a good time." And so they filmed this entire last episode, and it looks like a straight-laced documentary. The guy comes out and says, "Folks, we have some very due to recently declassified documents, we have some very interesting information to share with you." And it's like on the whole show, they're uncovering this conspiracy that the world's top minds were disappearing. It's like, well, where the fuck are they going? And as you're watching it, some of these people are actors that you know from other shit at the time, you know? So like, it's not real. But as you're watching it, he eventually gets to the conclusion that they found out they were all getting shipped to Mars, and that there was a joint Soviet-US mission to Mars in 1962. And that you get at the end of it, at the end of Science Report, you get footage from the spaceship that's landing on Mars, and it's like the ground is falling out from underneath, and you just go, oh my God. And like, we know the models and everything that were made on the set of Science Report that created that visage, you know, or that created that video, right? Like, we know it's not real. We know it. And this guy is laying it out. You can go on YouTube and you can watch the actual video of the landing.
So he doesn't understand that this is a false idea. Like, Alternative 3 isn't a real thing.
Yeah, I mean, so the guy who ended up writing the book, Lee Atkins, I think his name is. Anyway, the guy who ended up writing the book, he claims that, yeah, the Science Report special was bullshit, but it was based on reality. Like they fabricated it, but that was based on, but that all of that actually has happened. And so he has this whole book, you know, about it titled Alternative 3. That's what the conspiracy was called in Science Report, was Alternative 3. And you can watch the whole damn thing, I think, on YouTube. I've even like made a DVD of it. I mean, it's fun. It's interesting. You know, it's kind of like that alien autopsy thing that Jonathan Frakes did, which was total crap, but was fun, you know, to imagine for a little while. Wow, what if we do have footage of Roswell aliens getting an autopsy done on? But this guy treats it as, yeah, you can go to YouTube amazingly and you can see this footage. It's like, no, jackass. like we know where this footage is from. And so again, it's more of that. He doesn't, and he's probably not wrong in thinking this. So I can't believe he's that much of an idiot. Like, a part of me wants to think that he's like really buys into this or something. Or I mean, that he knows he's peddling crap. You know, he's a snake oil salesman, not to get into a reptilian conspiracy. But to put it simply, I think he knows that most people don't bother to check references. And so he just runs with it. And it's like, yep, I have all the evidence and I have the truth.
Sure, especially people who listen to audiobooks. Especially people who listen to audiobooks at 2.5x.
Yeah.
But I guess you don't have to check the references if you've already read them.
Well, that's the funny thing, is that I've been reading this shit for years. So anyway, the book, yeah, I mean, you know, if you want to get into some kind of reptilian conspiracy nonsense, and it is, have a good time. Dark Fleet by Len Kasten. So, okay, I've been talking forever. What have you been reading?
Well,
as late.
Today I just finished a book called Roar, written by Stacey Sims.
Not by Katy Perry.
No. Okay. Are you kidding? What kind of book would she have to write?
Well, I did her song read? Roar. Do you remember? Never mind. Keep going. You're doing great.
Yeah, MK Ultra. Ties right in.
Yeah. Wow, what a segue. All right, no, go ahead. Yeah.
No, so this book is about female fitness.
Yeah.
So, as most of you probably know, especially if you're into fitness, it's dominated by men and research on men. Very little research exists specifically for women in the realm of fitness. Like, most supplements are made for men. Most workout tips that you get are made for men. Like, so much research that our society functions on is based on men, and like men aged 35 to 40 of an average body weight of like 150 to 170.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really not relatable to women. And the main point in this book that the author repeats over and over again is that women are not small men. We can't just do the same things that men do, but in smaller amounts. And we can't eat the same things and recover the same way.
There are very particular aspects of your biology that you can take advantage of, beware of.
Yeah, that was mainly my interest in reading this book, was I wanted to learn more about how I could work with my physiology to increase effectiveness and productivity and overall well-being.
Right.
When it comes to fitness and health overall, which includes diet. And this book was written with people who do extreme fitness in mind, like ultra marathoners or people who are doing triathlons. And that's not me, but that's all right, because she still had some really useful information for just everyone. Like the second chapter was specifically dedicated to the monthly hormone cycle of women.
Sure.
And it went into more detail than I've ever heard, even in a health class.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. Let me tell you, there were so many useful pieces of information in this book. It's not usually the kind of thing I would listen to, but I've been focusing more on health recently.
Well, I mean, you work out 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And an hour or two a week. I mean, or an hour or two a day. I mean, this is serious for you.
It's important to me,
right?
Especially since I just came out of a long 6-month period where I was sitting in a desk for like 6 to 8 hours a day.
In front of Zoom. Yeah. Yeah, right.
Well, at the beginning of the semester, at least I was able to like walk across campus and get in some exercise that way. But yeah, since, things have been shut down, I've just been sitting at home in a desk, and now I'm on summer vacation, so I have time to work out, and I'm jumping full speed into it.
Yeah.
And it's really great. There were so many tips, even just general tips. Like, I think I talked to you about this earlier, and you were kind of surprised to hear it too. But, like when you're doing extreme exercises or long bouts of activity, drinking straight water doesn't hydrate you nearly enough. Like you have to include a little bit of salt and glucose.
So you sprinkle in some salt into the water.
Yeah, maybe a little maple syrup
to allow it to absorb?
It has to do with osmotic pressure. But
right.
Essentially, like, just drinking more water is going to make you, pee out most of your hydration.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just things like that. Like, I never would have guessed.
Yeah, I had never heard that before. I mean, and I go to YouTube channels for fitness, podcasts for fitness. I read tons of books about fitness. I mean, and magazines even. And I'd never heard that.
Yeah, and that's something for everyone, not just for women.
Right.
But as far as like the topics that she delved into, it had to do with also like diet and nutrition, specifically catering to the hormone cycle, because like our hormones as females are constantly in a state of flux throughout the month.
Mm-hmm.
So like during different weeks, we may be feeling either tired and lethargic and a little more sad, or really energized and, needing to eat a lot more protein during certain times.
Right.
Yeah, that was another thing I was really amazed by, is like women, their muscles break down more quickly and it's harder for them to recover. So they actually need to eat a lot more protein when exercising in order to maintain their muscle mass.
Right. Which, I mean, that is a difference because like to maintain muscle mass for a male body it actually doesn't take much to maintain. For growth and things like this, that's different. Then you get into, the gram per pound and whatever, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I got my hands on an ebook copy of this. I'm intrigued to go through it myself. And
you want to learn about females?
Yeah. Well, I mean, because you're totally right. I mean, the only book I have specifically for women's, like weightlifting of any kind or strength training is a book from Arnold Schwarzenegger from literally 40 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, like there's just, I know there are more out there. But the point being is that, yeah, it is mostly it is a space definitely dominated by men in many ways. I mean, and there have been Muscle and Fitness Hers, but that magazine tanked I mean, Muscle and Fitness doesn't exist anymore either, but Muscle and Fitness, hers, or for her or whatever, I mean, that tanked 10 years ago. Like, so one could argue they felt like there wasn't even a market signal for that sort of thing, which I think is outrageous. And some of the stuff you told me that's in this book, I mean, really like drives the point home. No, strength training for women, absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's so important for women to do strength training specifically because of our, like loss of iron every month or calcium.
Yeah.
There's development of so many things in your body that are really necessary to maintain bone strength, especially as you age. But anyway, yeah, I just found this book fascinating, and she even covers aspects of psychology that I think might explain what you're talking about with women's the magazine tanking. So I think basically what she was implying is that with women's mental states, they have more of a likelihood to have a broad range of interests and not really categorize themselves as athletes, whereas men, they're more specific and focused, so they're more likely to call themselves athletes. So I wonder if that has something to do with it, like women not thinking that they're necessarily athletes, so not buying the magazine. I'm not really sure, but there's so many different things about women that she really outlines, and her main philosophy in this book, which I really appreciate, was focusing on the physiological differences, because I think historically, and even in recent history, when you hear women talk about the differences between males and females as far as mental states, like physiology, psychology, whatever, hormone cycles, you name it, they try to minimize those as much as possible.
The differences.
Yeah, exactly. And they attribute it mostly to the way that women are socialized as they're growing up and learning like gender roles and things like that. And those certainly play a role, but I think it's doing a disservice to women and their self-knowledge by ignoring and minimizing those differences, because they are real.
Sure. Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and I think it's fantastic for a book of this nature to finally come out. And like I said, I know there have been others, and there are certainly women who clearly, I mean, like women's fitness competition has been a thing for a long time, so clearly they have some idea of how, how it's done and all this. But I mean, there's so much, especially when it comes to female physiology, that, and I bring this example up many times on the show, that, we didn't even know the full shape of the clitoris until like 10, 15 years ago. I mean, in the history of medical science, nobody had a fucking clue, just how, on the inside, particularly just how, big, the clitoris is, right?
Yeah. Nobody was interested.
Right.
Nobody cared. Who's going to fund that study? Oh, it's on women. That's not interesting.
Exactly. Right. And so, yes, I mean, for people to think, I mean, I'm just saying that, yes, there are new things to be learned, and I'm glad that it's being explored, particularly with this book. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. And like the main focus for like addressing these physiological differences, she gives you pointers on like how to feed yourself and how to recover properly. And like, she never talks about it as if like women are superior or men are superior or anything like that. She just says we're different, but equal, and she tries to teach you how to work with your biology in order to provide your body what it needs so it can make everything that it does. Which is why I'm a big fan of this book, because I think a lot of fitness magazines or a lot of fitness books would probably recommend like supplements.
They're just going to sell you a supplement.
Yeah. And, they have products to sell and things that are quite possibly mostly artificial, that aren't really derived from anything natural. And that's not really good for you. I mean, like it might provide something important for your body, but I think there's actually like quite a bit of overlap between this book and How Not to Die by Michael Grieger. Because she's saying like, eat really low on the food chain. Don't take antioxidant supplements. Don't take these other supplements. They're not going to do you any good. You need to get these nutrients from raw foods.
Right.
So yeah, I was really astonished by that. And
yeah, I appreciate any time somebody recommends ways to stimulate your body's natural processes of, bringing out whatever a supplement would normally, the result a supplement would normally engage in, Like if you can raise your testosterone naturally for guys, or, whatever. I think that's the right way to go.
Yeah, and I've never really understood the desire for like all of these artificial supplements. It makes me wonder, like, how do people think that our ancestors survived without these supplements?
Yeah, see, right. But with a lot of bodybuilding, these guys are going to inhuman levels.
Well, that's, if you're going to inhuman levels, you have to eat an inhuman amount of food. Like, I feel like that's a slightly different story if you're trying to go for superhuman. But if you're just going for extreme nutrition and fitness, that's something that's achievable with a normal food diet.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's something we're always learning more on too, is, like how does gut biome affect who we are and, even our personality and so on. I think that's an area where, well, we're learning to put it simply.
Yeah. And apparently, I'm still learning about my own biology.
Right. Well, there you go. You brought up, anything else you want to bring up on this one?
No, I think that about covers it. There's my book review.
Yeah.
I give it 5 stars.
Absolutely. So I guess while we're going down the Sovereign Tech Book Club here quick, you did mention Dr. Michael Greger. So that's the book that I actually did just finish, was How to Survive a Pandemic. Okay. Obviously a very timely, this book just came out like last week.
Yeah, I remember looking through Audible and I was like, hey, this book comes out on the 3rd. And you're like, oh, that's tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it was weird too, because he just came out and I haven't even finished this book. Just in February, he came out with a new book. He came out with How Not to Diet. And you got to understand, his books, it's not like Dark Fleet here, where it's 6 hours. These are 22-hour opuses that he writes,
and because he makes real references to real science. Oh,
yeah.
There's many scientific papers.
Yeah, you're going to have evidence, you're going to have that fiber because the evidence is going to be pouring out of your ass. It's amazing. And I really appreciate this guy's work. And he doesn't, he's all about plant-based and all that, but he doesn't like really toe a hard line, which I also appreciate. We never need to, getting dogmatic, that's where you run into problems a lot of times in life. His How to Survive a Pandemic, I had no idea, because like this guy's kind of hot now for being, for pushing hard on, again, plant-based diet, vegan, vegetarianism, etc. But again, he doesn't like pull a really hard line on that. He's
not like a meat hater.
Yeah, exactly. So, which again, like I said, I appreciate that. And I've enjoyed his work for that, and How Not to Die, I think we both talked about that book on this show, at least in the past year.
Oh, it's a wonderful book.
It's fantastic. How Not to Diet, I haven't finished that one yet, but when I saw this How to Survive a Pandemic, obviously with the present climate that we're in, I was like, well, hell, I got to read this right away, and I did, and I got through all 20 hours pretty quickly. This book spends it's broken up into like 4 or 5, or actually I think it's like 6 parts. Most of the time it is him, and he has the credentials for it because he worked on AIDS and other things in the 80s and everything. This guy has been around. He spends most of the time, he talks a lot about the Spanish flu, and he spends a lot of the time just laying out where these, avian flus, H1N1, H5N1, COVID-19, coronaviruses, et cetera, where all of these things come from historically. And that's the bulk of the book. There's actually, and I'm not knocking it for this because I think all of that is incredibly important information, but very little of the book is actually like tips on what you can do to survive. a pandemic. And a lot of it, frankly, does come down to like washing your hands. Like that's actually a really freaking big deal in what he lays out. Now he gets pretty extreme, and he makes his case. I mean, folks, if anything of his solutions or anything that I say about what he wrote in his book sounds really extreme, check out the book first, because I guarantee you he'll make his case. You can disagree with him, and that's fine, but
he's got the medical experience. He knows the history of how these viruses came to be in the human population.
Right. He's not pulling the shit out of his ass. He's not. And also he's not. I mean, there might be points where he's appealing to legislation of some kind, but you got
to function in the modern world if you're a doctor and an author. And you're trying to make these large changes.
Right.
I mean, you don't have to, but
no, right. But I mean, but he's just making the point that, it's not if, it's when, and that there's definitely going to be something far worse down the line, than say COVID-19, etc. And I think one of the most important things that I feel like this book lays out is that, there's an old saying, which is, don't, how does it go? Don't attribute to malice that which can be attributed to stupidity, or that which can be, however that goes.
Which we've seen happen recently with the COVID-19. Well, actually, since the beginning.
Tell me more.
As far as people attributing to malice the virus escaping and infecting the public.
Oh, well, that's what I was going to get at, is that he makes the pretty clear case. No, there's every reason in the world that this would just happen. You don't need a grant. It doesn't need to be a Bill Gates conspiracy.
Yes.
It doesn't need to be any of this stuff. Like there is just genuine stupidity and a complete ignorance, or not. It's not even ignorance. It's like governments will just straight up ignore the evidence of, hey, maybe we shouldn't be, maybe we shouldn't be producing so many, or raising so many chickens, or maybe we shouldn't be doing this and that.
There's a certain comfort and tolerance of the way things are.
Yep.
That's
a lot
too
of
hard to
lobbying
overcome.
Money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because he gets to one of his solutions at the end, and people might think this sounds nuts, but I'm telling you, listen to the whole thing. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying I agree with doing it, but he basically says we need to kill millions of chickens. And again, the guy's not necessarily anti-meat. He's just saying we've got to wipe like duck and chicken out of our diet.
Yeah, just don't consume it anymore. He's talking about like the factory farm chickens, right?
Right, specifically. And if there wasn't factory farming, I mean, the bulk of people would not be getting Tyson or Purdue chicken.
No way.
Yeah.
It would be 100 times more expensive than it is now.
Now, he does a good job here, because he says, like, he says, understand. He says, if we did actually go out and kill millions of chickens tomorrow, he's like, before you think that that's some terrible thing, guess what? That actually happens every 6 weeks. Basically, the entire chicken population in factory farming dies every 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Is slaughtered, and that's what ends up in your freezer. And so it's not like it's something that wasn't going to happen anyway. Right.
Right. Just enjoy your last meal of chicken, and then, it'll be over. Yeah.
So again, I'm not saying that that's the way to go. I'm not saying anything. I'm just telling you what this book laid out, and it's very interesting. And before you, just like we were talking about with Dark Fleet, go ahead, check out the references, do the fucking due diligence. Okay. Because I think this guy did. And, there was a lot of things when he would say something really extreme, I would go to the footnotes, and because I have the ebook as well. I'm like, all right, what is he talking about? And I'll look at it. And I mean, I've debated some of what he said in How Not to Die as well, so it's not like I'm 100% buying everything that he's selling. But I really think it's a very helpful read. And for a lot of people who have not done any research into factory farming or in meat production and things like this, I think it's a hell of a primer to get into. So I'll give the book 5 stars, and I think it's totally worth reading, whether you agree with it or not.
So what do you think about his proposal at the end?
Of killing all the chickens?
Yeah, and not including it in their diet. I know you said that you don't want to say that it's right, but for you personally.
See, these are the things I don't say on the air, because
But this is what we all want to know.
This is how you lose listeners, you understand? No, I don't care about if I lose listeners.
You're not prescribing anything to anyone else. All the listeners are safe.
I never, like, yeah, the way I think things should be, I never anticipate the world ever being that way, nor would I want it to be, because if I were, I'd be a tyrant. Or if I did, I'd be a tyrant.
Exactly.
And I am not that.
No.
So, you know, but do I think that his solution actually makes sense? I mean, if we're into root striking, okay, let's get this shit out of our, I mean, you know, in fact, I mean, there's research to suggest how did we end up with a common cold? It's because we ate fucking horses. All right, well, let's stop doing that. You know, like that sounds like a good idea. And that's not hard, you know?
So you're saying that living in close proximity with and consuming animals is how he argues in the book most viruses were transmitted to humans, or at least some of the major viruses that we know of today.
Yes. Yeah. Partly it's the production process and so much more, or the farming process and everything else that they go through. Now, if we were in a very different world where everything was more farm to table, you know, which is certainly something that's grown in popularity, but that doesn't scale very well. That's why you don't have a lot of investors buying into it.
No, it has to be very local.
Right. You know, that'd be a different story. Like, I mean, I've raised chickens. I know exactly what it's like. I know how beneficial it is to have eggs every fucking morning, you know? I mean, and
you paid attention to those chickens, and you probably knew when they were sick.
Absolutely, yes.
If you had killed a chicken for consuming, which I don't know, did you ever do that?
Yes. I've snapped the neck. I've done the whole thing.
You like gutted it and everything, yep. And you were very careful, right?
Yeah, I mean, I took that very seriously. Yeah.
Well, that's not what happens in factory farming.
No. These are people who just want to like spray everything down and hope that works out all right and it gets FDA approval or EPA approval or whatever. But
they're slicing and dicing. They're throwing parts into grinders.
Oh, they're turning cows into cannibals. They're literally feeding cows themselves. Like, it's fucking insane.
Bad.
You know, and even meat eaters, even the carnivore types, right? The people who are into the carnivore diet. I've read their books. They know. They all talk about how, holy shit, I wish it was like New Zealand, you know, where they don't feed them where they don't feed them the crap. And you get like these really great cuts of meat and everything. And they're just dying. They want like their meat shipped from New Zealand because in New Zealand, it's not all this factory farmed horseshit. It's old school there, right? So you guys know it too. I mean, like even meat eaters know this factory farming crap is horrible, you know? Anyway.
And like, I'm sorry. I'm not being judgmental, but most people that I've encountered, and I ask them about this, they know that it's not entirely healthy or sanitary or whatever, but they don't want to know the specifics.
No, like, they eat hot dogs anyway.
Yeah, it's just they want to be able to eat the hot dogs, but they don't want to know how it's made. Right. Because if they knew, then they would be too grossed out to do it. Yeah,
the book lays out a lot of that too, saying that like basically a lot of these companies thrive off of the fact that people just don't know how it's done.
Or they don't want to know because it's so tasty.
Right. And I'll tell you, I get fucking annoyed when I hear people like defending McDonald's and other places.
What was that book that came out it was like a couple decades ago. Where it was a book written about McDonald's and the fast food industry overall, but more specifically about McDonald's. And this guy was going down the line of like how McDonald's was formed and how the burgers and the French fries are made. And I'll have to look into the title of that. But anyway, it's a famous book. It's been around for a long time. That was one of the books that got me started down this road of like learning about factory farming.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I mean, people will basically they will be supportive of like McDonald's and say, oh, you know, please don't legislate against McDonald's, blah, 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 because, you know, then poor people can't eat or whatever. And it's like, how about you argue for poor people getting access to like much better food? Instead, you know, if you're going to go down that road, if you're going to worry about legislation, how about you legislate in favor like genuinely in favor of the health of the poor people instead of like the more economic concerns. And no, those are not the same. Standard of living and quality of life are two very, very different concepts. And people really forget that. But that's really, that's very annoying. Now, and look, and I'm not one of these people who's attacking, a quick side note that really fucking annoyed me. Speaking of the present climate, during a lot of the protests that have been going on lately, it was revealed that the CEO of Wendy's donated some 400 million or some stupid amount of money. I don't know I forget what it was to Donald Trump. No, I mean, look.
What?
Yeah. And so everybody said, cancel Wendy's. And look, I'm an anarchist. Fuck Donald Trump, right in the pooper. I couldn't give, I don't care about that guy. And I think anybody that supports that guy is a fucking dick. All right. Like
a tiny one.
Yep. And yes,
a
most
micro
likely.
penis.
Yep. Probably. Yeah. Bingo. So, wow. All right. But you want some reality, folks. And this is more of the same problem that people don't know how civilization works, right? This goes all the way from not checking references in Dark Fleet to, not knowing how food gets made or produced to this. Because I saw on Twitter, everybody for a good couple of days like, I am never eating at Wendy's again. 90% of Wendy's restaurants around the world, well, they're not international. Like I think there's very few countries they're actually in as far as that goes. But regardless, around the world, just say that for the argument's sake, our franchisees, they have nothing to do with corporate. You aren't like, they have completely separate CEOs. And the only time that they are in any way beholden to the CEO that donated to Donald Trump is, maybe when like they'll have a guy come out that'll walk around with the general manager of a franchise, however many stores that is, 2, 3, 5, however many, stores are in a franchise, and they'll do an inspection and make sure it meets with corporate standards.
But they still have to pass money along to corporate, right? They're still feeding that.
I suppose they do they pay for the license, and yeah, there's some of that, but understand, like the franchisees are not that CEO. They are their own separate business people that happen to be buying a name, and so I thought that was ridiculous. And
it seems ridiculous to me that people are stopping eating Wendy's because they donated to Trump and not because of any other health concerns.
Yeah, when there's plenty of health concerns like we're laying out here,
right.
to talk about as good reasons to stop eating at Wendy's, but whatever, that's the thing, is that requires actual research, and most people aren't willing to go through that. Okay, so I'm done dodging your question. So how do I feel about eliminating all the chickens or all the factory farm chickens and ducks? Why not? Basically, the question is like, do I have a problem with chicken no longer being a part of like our diet as human beings, or ducks being a part of our diet as human beings? Why? I have no problem with that, and the solution is that just at some point, maybe people rationally choose to stop eating a animal that can transmit a very deadly virus that could wipe out your entire species. Just out of pure self-interest, I'm on board with doing that, with not having that be a part of the diet anymore. I mean, fortunately, I have no interest, before somebody misconstrues what I'm saying, I have no interest in legislation getting passed that says we can't factory farm chickens anymore or anything like that. I don't want that for 2 fucking seconds. Okay. I don't want some like government mandate that says chickens must die. No interest in that whatsoever. Would I mind
all chickens?
Yeah,
everywhere.
Right. Would I mind if Chick-fil-A went out of business? No, I wouldn't be too hard up about that. I'm like, okay, you fucking assholes. Good for,
yeah. Goodbye, KFC.
Yeah. Right. So see, I'm trying to show that I'm actually rational about what I'm saying here, is that because I'm not defending fast food, but then also, I'm not supportive of them either. Or
it's
you get
interesting
what I'm
that
saying.
you're naming fast food restaurants. And Fast Food Nation was the name of the book I was referencing earlier anyway. By Eric Schlosser. But like fast food is one of the biggest providers of meat to Americans, right? Yes, people do buy it at the grocery store to feed their families throughout the week. But these fast food restaurants go through meat so quickly. Like, they don't even sell all of it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like millions of tons every year, and it's incredible. But I find it interesting that you're naming fast food restaurants and not like grocery store chains or something.
I could do that too. I mean, I think it's very, and I've kind of hinted at this on past episodes of Sovryn Tech, and it's something I've been learning about a lot recently as well. And this comes from people who are not vegan or vegetarian or anything of the sort. This comes from other, other experts in different fields. But basically, in the 1970s, the world, or America, dramatically changed in many ways. Like, suddenly there was, like, the marketing machine became it existed before, but it got perfected, it seems, in the 70s. And you had an industrial revolution that, like, everybody, most people recognize that the industrial revolution in, early 20th century, a little before and so on, how much that changed the world, right?
Sure. The Jungle was written about it.
Yeah, Upton Sinclair, there you go. In the 70s, there was a food industrial revolution, just as dramatic, but most people, it was almost a shadow. Like, you didn't notice the change because it all happened on the ingredients list. And actually at the time, it didn't have to be on the ingredients list.
Wow.
And so, I mean, there was a major, major shift that occurred in the 70s with food and a lot of other things. I talked about it in one of my Q&As recently, but anyway, most people just don't know that happened. That the way that we used to eat, what we used to eat, the ingredients, everything completely shifted. And it's not just, because it affected fast food too. Fast food used to cook all their shit in lard, right? And then that changed and it all went to vegetable oil or whatever fucking concoction that they, drained out of car engines that they put on the grill.
So what was this change about?
Well, a lot of it was about how do we make food last long. I mean, a lot of it was about preserves, like how do we make food or preservatives? How do we make food last longer on the shelves? How do we make food easier to cook? How do we do, X, Y, Z, all these things that, certainly brought up the level of convenience around a lot of it for not just the grocery store that could have, that didn't have to write up so much food cost at the end of the month, but also for the consumer. But the thing is that so much of this shit was completely unnatural, didn't go through half the testing that it should have on human beings. This is the whole reason that people are getting so hot about like farm to table and a lot of this other stuff, because finally people are talking about it that, whoa, what we did in the 70s to our food, holy hell, and what we've accepted for so many decades, that's got to stop.
Well, we don't wrap it in asbestos anymore, but...
Well, that's nice. Yeah, but it's all...
So
Go ahead.
So are you saying the food that we eat today is similarly unhealthy to what it evolved into in the 70s?
I'm saying that before the 70s, the food that you got in grocery stores and even at what would equate to fast food wasn't as big a thing, obviously, at the time. A lot of this stuff was significantantly healthier for you.
You mean it was more natural?
It was
like
more.
It wasn't food
right,
science.
Right. It wasn't so much food science. There wasn't even so much factory farming and so on. It was a very, very different situation. Now, some people might want to say when we bring that up that, well, as far as slaughtering all the chickens, that didn't stop the Spanish flu, and that wasn't a problem when the Spanish flu happened in in the early 20th century, 1918, whatever. The reason the Spanish flu spread was because governments basically downplayed it. They said because they were concerned about the war effort, they didn't want anything to get in the way of fighting World War I. And so they basically lied around the world, every government, to their citizenry, saying, no, Spanish flu, it's just a cold. It's no big deal. But the people wisened up. Like they knew. They said, no. I watched somebody die in 24 hours. Fuck you, that's the cold.
So people weren't taking precautions? Is that what happened?
Businesses weren't, whoever, because government certainly didn't have, and fortunately it didn't have the kind of power that it does today. And that's true around the world at that time. Basically people weren't taking precautions because nobody was warning them. And the government, at least what power it did have, was basically telling newspapers, oh, no, everything's fine. So the issue there wasn't that we had too many chickens. The issue there was that there wasn't enough information.
Yeah, and at that time, the factory farming wasn't even happening, was it? Like chickens were raised.
Yeah,
on farms.
No. That wasn't happening. But that's what I'm saying is that, like, if somebody could have told them to just wash their hands, the Spanish flu wouldn't have been as terrible as it was. But governments at that point, it was almost the opposite situation, right? Because a lot of people get conspiratorial saying, oh, the government's using this to destroy the economy or to do whatever the fuck I don't know, whatever people think that the government's doing with this. Granted, the U.S. certainly downplayed COVID-19, I think initially, or at least Donald Trump did.
Before it came to the U.S., yes.
Yeah. But
once it got here, that was a totally different story.
Right. Then everybody's wearing masks. And now who knows what anybody's doing. And anyway, so, but at the time, government, government's complicit in pretty much all of those deaths of people with Spanish flu. And that was millions of people. Because government literally, fed misinformation and downplayed what was going on, saying it wasn't a real threat just so that they could keep the war effort going. And that's crazy. And a lot of people, we don't know all this. And that's part of why I think this book, How to Survive a Pandemic, is very worthwhile to listen to. Its history of the Spanish flu is phenomenal on its own. And it really is solid because it brings up a lot of information because it talks about actually how they brought the Spanish flu back to study it because nobody really knew where it came from up until the past few years. Or the past 15 years.
So did it come from Spain?
No. In fact, calling it Spanish flu was to basically make Americans feel better about themselves. And in varying countries to feel better about themselves. They just blamed it on the country that they could.
Wow.
Anyway.
It sounds like there's a lot in this book. So you would recommend to read it. Can you tell us what it did suggest as far as surviving a pandemic?
Well, let me say quick that. Yeah. All right, fine. We'll go there. That's fine. Well, hand washing was a huge part of it. And like I said, the killing of the chickens and so on, storing stuff up, storing up hand washing materials for a good 3 months. It talked about that. It talked about masks, what are the best masks to wear. It made an interesting case that running to the hills actually won't solve anything, or may not be a solution because of the way, that it spreads and so on. It was interesting that it said, or that it was recommended don't have long nails. I thought that was a finer point, but
I like that point.
Well, there you go.
Well, the thing is, everybody's been told to always scrub beneath their fingernails, right?
Yeah.
What about the people that have really long fingernails?
Yeah.
I've seen so many girls, because I attend a public university, that have these long fake nails that, I'm pretty sure they're glued on or whatever.
Yeah.
But they always have them. I don't understand how they button buttons or zip up or they're good for picking things, but they're not good for what about typing? I don't know. I just don't understand it. Anyway, they are a magnet for dirt and grime and oils.
He specifically calls out fake nails as well. I mean that's that can be a very real health concern. Some of the numbers that he lays out in it are crazy, where even doctors that are in the ICU, they only wash their hands 30% of the time that they're supposed to based on research. it's anyway. There's a lot. They're actually like I said, not a whole lot of the book is spent on the actual solution, like what you can do as an individual. But what's there, I think, is solid. I didn't hear anything that I was like, well, that's crazy. It was pretty good.
So I think you mentioned he will make hand sanitizer out of vodka if he can't find any at the store.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing with that is that vodka or alcohol in general may not be strong enough for all of these, H1 or, for COVID-19, vodka has a high enough alcohol content that it would kill it.
The alcohol content has to be at least 60%.
60%. Yeah.
70% is the most effective because it's very potent in alcohol, but it doesn't evaporate away as quickly as like a 80 or 90% solution.
Yeah.
So that's the ideal point, 70.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if you can't find hand sanitizer, go to the liquor store, that's kind of his recommendation, which I thought was interesting. But, he makes it very clear that this will work on COVID-19, but there's other things that it wouldn't end up working on.
Oh, you're talking about the 30% solution?
Yeah. So anyway,
it's not antibacterial.
Right.
At that level.
Right. But it works, it works. So anyway, it's a great book. Whether, you want to buy into everything, his solutions and all that, I still think it was a really, really solid read and a lot of interesting stuff. A lot of it about the Spanish flu I thought was really, really fascinating to get into, especially, people say like, oh, I never even heard of the Spanish flu. Like my grandmother never talked about the Spanish flu. She was alive during then. Why didn't she talk about it? And he basically says like that it was such, and I think this speaks to a lot of what might be going on today, or it's part of it, is that it was so traumatic for the world that you basically had like collective amnesia. They just, like a traumatic response where they just pretend it didn't happen. They pretended it didn't happen.
You think it was so terrifying that people just didn't want to relive that experience because it was something that could have potentially wiped out humanity.
Yeah. Right. And they just saw so many people die. The mass graves, everything about it was just horrible. They just basically pretended it didn't happen and moved on. And I wonder how much a lot of that is going to speak to today, years from now.
Well, there are certain things that have happened throughout history that are incredibly traumatic. Mm-hmm. Just one thing that comes to mind is the Holocaust, for example, which that one could argue was even more of a trauma.
Well, we set up memorials for that. Like that.
Yeah, but that's the thing is that people want to remember that. They actively seek out and learn about it. And they're trying to like educate the public about that sort of occurrence. But it's certainly not the only government perpetrated mass murder of a particular group of people.
Sure. Well, you raise a great point with that because, there's a lot of people who want to deny that the Holocaust ever happened.
Yeah, and they're crazy.
Well, I agree, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Jew. That it's really...
There's irrefutable evidence that it happened.
Right.
But I suppose they would find reasons to refute it.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing is that I think this, and I know I'm not the first person to say this, but people have a natural... In fact, Arthur Miller originally said something to this effect. People really have a natural sense or feeling that society has to make sense. Like that there's got to be a reason and that something so terrible can't just happen. Like we can't, I think so many people just cannot accept that something so dark, something so terrible, be it Spanish flu, Hitler, maybe COVID-19, maybe systemic racism, maybe all kinds of things. Maybe this is why a lot of people can't see government as the fucking bad guy that it is, because their brains just won't let them process the possibility that something that terrible is going on. It won't allow it to happen. And we're seeing it happen. You have Holocaust deniers, you have an entire generation that wouldn't even write it in their diaries about Spanish flu. You know, I mean, like, why did they bring Spanish flu back? Because nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody, not even the scientists at the time. I mean, they didn't have the tools to study it anyway, but the scientists at the time wouldn't even want to write down about it. Like, it's a miracle we even have evidence of it.
And that's interesting you say that. I wonder if the reason that nobody wanted to talk about it, and maybe what made the trauma that much deeper, was the fact that the government was lying about it and suppressing information and trying to limit the spread of information about the Spanish flu, because people were getting the message not to talk about it. And maybe for the people who did experience it first or secondhand, you know, they were seeing something so horrible and then being told, this doesn't exist, it's not a problem.
There would be precedent for that. And the precedent, I think, would actually be the League of Nations. Because if you were, basically, like, how does a person then, you know, how would they necessarily resolve, like, okay, how do we keep from this ever happening again, this pandemic? How do we keep this from ever spreading from country to country? Well, we don't do globalism anymore, right? I'm sure that's what a lot of them might have thought. You know, maybe you enact an isolationist policy of some kind. Well, that wouldn't fly with what the U.S. government at the time and other governments in the world were trying to do with the League of Nations. So to suppress the danger of, you know, some kind of like global unity, yeah, I think there's at least that reason for governments to do so at the time. That makes sense. That's a very interesting point you bring up.
Yeah, I think that there's some sort of psychological effect on people. Not just that the illness was terrible, which I imagine it was if people were dying within 24 hours of showing symptoms, but also that the governing body of the time was telling them to not talk about it. Like that, I think that would cause a lot more damage than just the illness itself, because people are being told essentially to repress these experiences, or at least they're being told that they're not important or relevant or true. If they suspect that it is the Spanish flu that's causing all of these deaths, they're being told by some organization that they're supposed to trust that it's not so.
Right.
And that's got to be like incredibly confusing and frustrating for people of the time.
Yeah. You know, something else that gets brought up in the book quite a bit that applies to this is he keeps trying to hammer home the point there is almost no cases of the 24-hour flu. Meaning that there's this idea, and I know I've been told it since I was a kid, you know, that there's this thing called the 24-hour flu where like you throw up for 24 hours and then suddenly you're fine. No, it's food poisoning. You know,
yeah.
There is no 24-hour flu. I mean, maybe in some rare case or something, but it's incredibly rare. But so many people, we could walk outside and talk to people, and I bet they'd say they got the 24-hour flu, but it's not. It's food poisoning. But it's not just necessarily food poisoning because of, you know, bad preparation of food, as in in your kitchen, but bad preparation at the factory. You know, like, I mean, and again, this thing, and that's almost that becomes sort of what you're talking about, where it is a cultural lie that there's this idea of the 24-hour flu, when no. There's something very wrong with our food. It's not a flu. So
yeah, you're right. People are using the colloquialism to kind of protect themselves from the real truth of what's going on.
Yeah, because you don't want to think that you ate something bad. You don't want to think that when you went to Louis, you know, in Indiana or something, that Louis restaurant somehow gave you bad frog legs. You don't want to think about, you know, whatever the fuck it was, you know, like these are things you don't want. You don't want it to be that, because God damn it, you met a hot gal at Louis last night, you know? And so, I mean, there's a lot of reasons.
While you were eating frog legs, huh?
All right, so maybe that's unbelievable, but
I love this story.
Yeah, but you get my point. Is that you know, there's a lot of very simple, and it doesn't have to be malicious. It's just quite simply humans just don't want to accept it. They don't. There's things they want to hold on to. There are distances that they don't want to go, be it laziness, lack of courage, or, you know, just a lackadaisical, you know, just this laissez-faire. I don't know, but yeah, I think that's there. I think that is a huge thing that does not get talked about enough, especially right now.
Well, if I can spread some information
Please.
about germs.
You're good at it.
Good at spreading germs or information?
Actually, both, but we'll spread some germs later. We'll swap some. Anyway, sorry, go.
So, I know that some people listening to this are probably still meat eaters, no matter what we say, and that's totally fine, and we accept that. So, meat naturally is sanitary. It's only when it's chopped up that it is exposed to viruses and bacteria, which all exist on the surface of the meat.
Yeah.
And the longer the meat sits out, the more they will reproduce. Mm-hmm. I mean, viruses probably won't, but the bacteria will. And those are usually things that give you food poisoning. There's an excess amount of bacteria.
Right.
So just make sure that you're cooking your meat completely thoroughly and that every surface that is touched by the meat and that you touch while you're preparing are sanitized.
Yes. Yeah. So
and that's all you have to do to protect yourself from this sort of illness.
Yeah. So, I mean, great reason to have the vodka around, you know.
Just like develop an awareness that like everything you touch has millions of little things crawling on it. Just like visualize that.
I could see it becoming like a new superstition, kind of like how you toss salt behind your back, right? But in this case, all right, spill a little vodka on the table, after you down some, and then rub it in on the counter.
You're not just pouring one out for your homies; you're doing it for all the bacteria too.
This could become a thing. Or maybe do it with tequila. There we go. The Rock can thank me later.
Well, the thing is, you don't have to live a hyper sanitary life. It's just when it comes to meat specifically, because that's where all the dangerous bacteria exist.
Well, this is part of the reason that I decided to become, vegan more. Was like, okay, so I don't have to worry if I accidentally leave the food out so much, know, and it'll be all right. Because that's the thing. Like, I get it. There's things I don't want to think about. There's things I don't want to worry about, Sure. And I want it to be simple, because I've got other shit to do, and so anyway, great recommendations, of course.
I just care about people and
yes.
want them to be healthy.
You most certainly do, Goddess of Love. Yes, you do. So, anyway, well, so I think this is wildly valuable. I'm probably going to title the episode Sovereign Tech Book Club.
Oh, wow.
because I think there's a lot of great info laid out here, even though we're just reviewing books. Boy, maybe we should do this more often.
This was just supposed to be a brief introductory segment, people. I know.
This is just
going on for over an hour now.
Right. We're at an hour 15 now. What the hell? Anyway.
We just have too much fun. We love books. We love talking to each other.
We do love books.
Heck, we love each other.
Yes. Oh, man. I mean, but that's another solution here. Okay. It's one of the things you and I have is an environment where, like, I'm reading this crazy ass book, and I don't mean How to Survive a Pandemic. I mean, Dark Fleet, but I know I can bring it up to you, and I don't have to worry about you in the back of your mind thinking, oh my God, Brian's finally snapped. He's gone. He's, like, I don't have to worry about it. I can just tell you, straight face, and then we move on. We discuss it, and we have a judgment, or we have a judgment free zone. It's kind of like Planet Fitness, right? We don't judge each other. We take the time to listen. We try to understand, and we also give each other, I think, very much the benefit of the doubt. That okay, no, they're smart.
Well, I really listened to you, and
right.
I know over time I learned what you actually truly in your core believe. And when you read books like this, I understand it's not that you are looking for more evidence to confirm something that you believe or want to believe. Mm-hmm. It's just to know what's out there.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it really is something I almost do for kicks with some of this stuff. But yeah, but that's it, is that I think if more people just had not just a person, but an environment where they can go to the crazy places temporarily,
Yeah, I totally accept that you want to explore these topics.
Right. And I mean, and vice versa. Not that I've I can't really think of anything you've presented to me where I'm like, wow, Alan's really, like we might need to reel in here. The deep end is getting awfully deep. but
I've been practicing my ESP. I'll like reach out my hand and try to like pull something to me from across the room, but so far no success.
Yeah, but this is a problem throughout the entirety of society, is that we don't have enough places where, not necessarily where we have free speech, or free speech or whatever, okay, but places where we can discuss things without judgment, or judgment can be reserved for a little while and then we can hammer it out and discuss it. That just doesn't exist for most people. And you can't get to, in my opinion, new ideas. In every industry, scientists, all of them, everybody's always talking about, yeah, we're looking for new ideas. Well, you can't get there if you're just going to constantly tell people, well, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah, no, I never say that to you. I will say it jokingly. But
yeah.
I don't ever call you crazy. I don't think you're crazy for reading these books. I think it's exciting.
Right.
That you are thinking so far outside of the box.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love that you're so creative.
Well, that goes both ways. So anyway, that's certainly a solution to a lot of this, is, just have a place where we can actually discuss this kind of stuff. Of course, maybe that's what Sovryn Tech provides for a lot of people as well, even though I did call the author crazy, but he is. And the evidence is found wanting.
But if he were here and we were talking to him, you would not be judgmental at all.
Not at first. No, I'd listen to him. That's the kind of
person you are.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I am that. I am a very open-minded guy. Thank you. If I don't say so myself, I got you to say it anyway.
Well, I experience that every day, and I'm so appreciative of it.
Well, likewise, because you also, listen to people, and I've seen you, like even at events and other things, where someone is telling you the most batshit insane thing, and you're just listening. You're like, yeah, and you run with it.
Well, you have to let people speak their truth.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy it, but
right.
Just accept that what they are saying they believe is true.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, should we get into some stories or something? We got a little bit of time left. We got I don't know.
We should probably try to touch on one at least.
Yeah. We should get to one. One of these I'm not gonna. This had to do with Apple Music. I'm not gonna go there right now. We can skip that, or I'll save it for the next episode. Actually, let's take a quick break and then we'll come back. Got an interesting story that's going to play off with the last episode that I think is worth talking about. We'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo! Hey, is Sovryn Tech not enough for you? Well, let me tell you about something you'll never get enough of. No, I mean it. We're talking about a radio show and podcast that goes all night long, 7 nights a week, 3 hours a night, 365 days a year, and has been going since the early aughts, baby. I am talking about none other than Free Talk Live. It's the show you control. That's right. It's an open phones call-in show that is ready for you. And if you're worried that your voice isn't going to get heard, don't be. We are talking about the only libertarian radio show stateside. And not only that, it's also the number 26 talk show in the United States. Start listening now and go ahead and hit that massive back catalog at freetalklive.com. The Golden Stallion guarantees a good time, and you might even find some episodes with me on them when you do. That's freetalklive.com, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Let's get back to the show.
The main story.
So, we could call this the story of the week, but this has been the main story. This has been such a wild episode, I think.
I've totally derailed the show.
I love it. You do that whenever you want. That's when the best stuff comes out, all the time. Last episode 377, I talked about I got into a bit of a screed. I derailed my own damn show, frankly.
Which you do a lot.
Yeah, I do. And I ended up talking about doing less. That we're constantly bombarded and constantly told, frankly, to just like keep doing more, try and multitask more, fit more in, or, you might be historically into so many things, but then whatever's going on, you end up working a lot more hours, or things change in your life. There might be some kind of dramatic change, and then you just, you can't do all these things that you used to do anymore. This sort of stuff happens. And I was basically suggesting that, to get, and this plays off of much of what we were talking about earlier, to even begin to try to explore the reality of any situation, scenario, or subject or whatever, you got to have focus, but if your thoughts are in a million places at once, it's not going to happen. And so that's sort of what I meant by doing less. And I actually saw an interesting story that's fairly recent. It's in the Harvard Business Review, which was, if you want to be more productive, try doing less, which I think actually drives the point home. When you hear me say that, Ellen, what instantly comes to your mind? The idea of to maybe be more productive, or to focus, do less.
I absolutely agree with that sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I've been ramping up on and developing in my own life over the last few years. I think a lot of people have gotten the message on social media that, and like other websites, maybe not Harvard Business Review, but certainly other business-related websites, that to be an ultra-productive person,
mm-hmm.
to achieve and be everything that you want in this crazy modern world, you have to be multitasking, or you have to be in this hyper-productive, stressed out state all the time, where you have everything planned out and you're doing multiple things at once. You've got like things going on in the background, and you've got things lined up that you're going to try next,
or a million notifications
timed out. Yeah, that too. Even if you're not trying to be hyper productive, if you're just trying to be an average productive person, people are inundated with cell phone signals all the time. Like, you're getting messages from 5 different apps.
Yeah.
I've even run into that problem where, some people use Telegram, some people use Signal, some people use Message Plus, some people use GroupMe.
Right.
You've got to check all of these different messaging apps just to get a full picture of what's going on in your world. And that is, that in itself is time consuming. Which I don't think a lot of people realize is when you try to multitask, which you can't actually do unless you're like me and you pet your cat while you're brushing your teeth. But that's simple muscle memory, you don't have to think about that when you just let your body do the motions. But for a lot of other things that take mental attention, you cannot multitask. You actually just shift from one task to another. And that process of changing speed and direction takes time in itself.
You raise a great point too with the different messaging apps, because I don't think we're ever going to, as much as I might want us to, or as much as I might want all of my interactions to be in one app, I don't think there's never going to be, and really maybe nor should there be, one app to rule them all, right? One messaging app, for everything. Because that creates a central point of failure.
Exactly, yeah.
But at the same time, because each one of these apps is different, I feel like you engage each of these apps and platforms with a different personality. Yeah, because they have a different personality, as it were. Like, they have a different UI, right? And so you engage with them. It's not just a matter of, okay, I got to check this app. You have to come at it with a very different attitude. I think that might be the better word, a different attitude. And even that just draws away more focus because it's just draining more of your mental bandwidth, you know? So I feel like there's a little bit of an issue there as well that might be somewhat unconscious. But anyway, that's not necessarily where this, I think it's a great point to bring up. Why don't we read a bit of this article here?
Okay, yeah. I'm really excited to get into this because I do agree that simplifying and doing less is actually the greatest way to achieve more.
Yeah, sure. Right. So anyway, here it is. It's from, and this gal actually has like a whole book on this. I think her name is Kate Northrup. We've been taught that if we want more money, achievement, vitality, joy, peace of mind, we need to do more, to add more to our ever-growing to-do list. But what if we've been taught wrong? What if the answer to getting more of what we want isn't addition at all, but subtraction? As it turns out, evidence supports that if we want to ramp up our productivity and happiness, we should actually be doing less. David Rock, author of Your Brain at Work, found that we're truly focused on our work a mere 6 hours per week, which starkly contrasts our collective buy-in to the 40-hour work week.
Woo, what are these people doing for work?
I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Are people really getting paid to sit at desks and do hardly anything? Because that's like when I was an intern and I would get a thrill out of working 10-hour days. Like, give me overtime, please. I wanted to be at work. I was so excited about what I was doing.
Right.
I couldn't imagine, like, only 6 hours a week of pure attention on what you're doing. That sounds like they're not actually enjoying what they do.
Yeah, I think you're hitting at a big point there. But then I don't think most people do. I don't think most people really enjoy like their work life. You know, most people are doing it to get a paycheck to what? Go and do other things. I mean, even I fall into that from time to time. So, you know, that's, you raise a great point though. If
Sure.
you're only focused like 6 hours, I mean, there have been various movements where, like work movements, and I don't mean like workers' socialist republic movements or anything like that. I mean, like actually people who are companies that are saying, yeah, you know, we only get like a good 3-4 hours out of a person per day. Why don't we switch to, having them only work 3 hours a day, but it's still like, they still get paid well though. That's not every job is still going to pay you well for doing 3 hours a day. Right.
Sure.
But it's because it's that high profile of a job or that mission critical or whatever. Or you have where people are doing like 4 10-hour days a week instead of, that's still the 40-hour work week, but doing that instead of, having 5 days where it's 8 hours a week. I mean, actually, let me ask you on this. I don't know about you, but like with the weekend, like Sunday is when I'm just finally feeling like I'm relaxing.
Yeah.
A lot of times. And so I really wish, like, I think if we had 3-day weekends, that would be far, far better. So
one possible work schedule setup that I've heard of from a local manufacturing facility, they actually do these shift rotations where they'll have a person work 3 days out of the week, and then the next week they'll work 4 days. And they keep shifting between 3 and 4 day weeks.
Right.
But their shifts are 10 hours.
Right. Okay.
So that does give you like a 3 to 4 day weekend, depending on which week it is.
See,
but you still have to be at work for 10 hours.
I would totally choose that. I mean, if I could have more days, I don't know. I feel like I work 10 hours a day anyway, oftentimes. I mean,
yeah.
But, or more.
What's an additional 2 hours?
Yeah. I mean, but I would love to have like just those longer time spans of time off and have the longer days of working, if that were the choice. I mean, really, and we've actually, you and I on Sovereign Tech have had conversations about work in the past and kind of like the issues with a lot of that. But what's happening isn't working right now. And part of it, I think, comes down to, part of the reason I think that people are so hungry for, like, for example, taking 4 10-hour days instead of 5 8-hour days is that, I mean, there is so much to do now. Like there's so much fun stuff to do now. Granted, maybe not so much during, lockdowns and quarantines and everything, but I mean, in general, in the modern world, like there's just so much to do.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless.
Right. Which might not have exactly always been the case, or at least it wasn't as enticing anyway back in the day.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the situations are very different. Like back in the day, I don't know when you're talking about, but like I think people's livelihoods were essentially their life. Like if you worked at the shoe shop, that you were probably like the owner or a family member of the owner, and like you lived right above it, so that was your whole world.
Right.
Like you were really invested in doing what you were doing because that was like the only real option you had if you wanted to stay with your family and make enough to live. But I don't know. I think people have always had personal lives. Things that they're interested in doing outside of work. Absolutely.
I'm just saying now, like, I mean, there's more, even if it's just the simple things or what could be, they're not simple. There's more TV to watch. There's more movies to see. There's more games to play. There's more, I mean, there's just so many options. It's really a thing. And that's kind of also what I was hitting at in the last episode about doing less, and I hate to ever say to anybody, I mean, I'm a hedonist. I hate saying you have to give something up, but
maybe consuming less entertainment is good for your attention span.
Yeah, sure. Well, anyway, let's keep going with the article here to discuss some of this. As it turns out, reading out with the article, evidence supports that if we want to ramp up our productivity and happiness, we should, I already read that part. Okay, here we go. When you stop doing the things that make you feel busy but aren't getting you results and are draining you of energy, then you end up with more than enough time for what matters and a sense of peace and spaciousness that constant activity has kept outside your reach. As people with full lives, kids, careers, friends, passions, logistics, and more, how can we apply the wisdom of doing less to give ourselves more time and alleviate stress without jeopardizing our results? We need to identify what not to do.
Can we pause just for a second?
Yeah, sure.
I think this is a huge point. And it's such a short paragraph here, but it's incredibly important, I think, to pay attention to things that you do throughout the day that you're doing because you feel the anxiousness of needing to do something, but it's literally a waste of time because you're not achieving anything.
Right.
I think people do this all the time. They're feeling like, I need to act, I need to do something. Yeah. But they're just like shuffling things around. And it like in these moments, you just need to pause and reflect. Like, why am I doing this? This is wasting my time. I need to get focused again.
Yeah.
I catch myself doing that all the time. I'll be like walking around looking at my plants. And next thing I know, I'm like, wait, I've already done this 3 times. I'm not, getting any new information here.
No, you're right. I mean, and I've run into the same, and there's times where like something seems so insurmountable, you don't even know where to start, or you don't even want to start.
Oh yeah, that's a different situation.
Yeah,
but
that's
that is really
too
difficult.
I mean, something to consider, and I've recommended, because people have asked me like actually about the very thing you just laid out, and something I've said to people is, and I do this, I try to follow my own advice. Just do something. Like, okay, if you can't do that, if there's something that you are willing to do that still is beneficial to you, and is still in some way rewarding to you, it's getting something done or whatever, go ahead and just go do that. I mean, I'll tell you, there's been times where I knew there was work I had, like something I had to get done. And I just did not have the energy, or I just wasn't prepared to make it happen.
You didn't have the cojones.
Yeah, I didn't have the cojones. Yeah. And I just wasn't there. Like I was not mentally prepared to do that. And quite frankly, you know what I would do? And it's not like it's just something that I like wantonly do. It's something that not wantonly, but it's something that I've wanted to do, that is important to me, and that helps give me like mental space. And this is going to sound stupid, but really, I will, like organize my Blu-rays, or like reorganize like some Blu-rays or something, that I've needed to do. And like, that could be seen as a pointless, to most people, like that could be seen as something pointless, but It's actually something that I've really wanted to do. And I'm just giving the very smallest example and trying to come up with the most pointless example. But it's something that I really wanted to get done. It was important to me.
But it's a long project and it's tedious. Like there's no joy in it, but you just want to have it done.
Yeah, but I had the energy to do that, right? And even though it wasn't related to work, I went ahead and just did that. Even though I didn't have the cojones or the moxie to get started on what I needed to do, I still got something done. And at least that was done. And interestingly enough, even getting like the little things done can give you a little extra courage to do the big thing.
Yeah, once you get that feeling of accomplishment from doing a little thing, that kind of takes away from the challenge of just beginning the bigger project. And that's really the hardest part of most of these, is just getting it started. Because there's like mental gear grinding of like, I don't want to do this. Yep, always. I mean, even like, when I have to go somewhere to work, I mean, always the hardest part was like wanting to go out the door. Once you're at work, it's like, okay, I got it, but I mean, but getting there, like, that's the part you just don't want to do it. You don't want to do it today, but anyway, yeah, you're right. That's a very important paragraph and a good point to bring up. Yeah. Just like, if you catch yourself wasting time as in maybe like you're delaying or stalling on starting something bigger, just redirect yourself to something that is productive. Yeah, there you go. So we'll keep going with it. Sure. We need to identify what not to do, but this determination can't be random. It must be methodical and evidence-based. Through my work with women navigating the dual vocations of entrepreneurship and motherhood, I've created a surprisingly simple exercise to help individuals decide what activities on their to-do list bring them the most value and which they can stop doing. Here's how it works. So now what is this? Six steps? Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess we could read through them quick. Yeah, the last couple are kind of the same as a few earlier ones. Right. So we'll go with it. So step 1, draw a line down the middle of a piece of paper lengthwise. Step 2, decide on an area of your life or work where you'd like to have better results and less stress. For example, perhaps you want to expand your thought leadership. Step 3, on the left-hand side, list the tasks or activities you do in that area of your work or life. As an aspiring thought leader, you might list attending conferences, pitching organizations for speaking opportunities, writing new articles, reading and researching, and so on. Step 4, on the right-hand side, make a list of your biggest wins in that area, like a speaking gig, a presentation you really nailed at work, or a pitch that was accepted at a major publication. This can often be a difficult step for some people. We have not been culturally conditioned to celebrate ourselves so often. So often, folks will draw a blank when listing their wins. Any result you've gotten, either one time or repeatedly, that was positive can go on this list. Don't get caught up in listing the right things. Just list what comes to you. And I would add on to that, even small wins, like you can put down. And that kind of speaks to sort of what I was saying, where even getting something done, even if it's not exactly what you should have done, is something that, that could help, that could be a decider in this. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Step 5, draw a line connecting each of your biggest wins to the activity or task that was most responsible for that result. Reading and researching, for instance, were essential to getting your pitch accepted for publication. So connect these two together. Step 6, circle all the activities and tasks on the left side of your paper that have been responsible for your big wins. Look at what's left. Whatever isn't circled is something you need to either stop doing completely, significantly minimize, or delegate if it absolutely must be done. For instance, if you discover that traveling for conferences once a month isn't directly contributing to any wins, it's time to set that aside or at least cut back. So she goes on, this same approach can be used to determine where to do less in other areas of your life. For instance, if you're looking to connect more with your children, you might list a few specific memories or wins when you really felt like you were being the best parent you could, such as singing silly songs with your preschooler while folding the laundry on a Sunday morning, or when your preteen bared their soul to you and you felt so honored by how safe they felt to tell you the hard stuff. Now think about the tasks you do on a regular basis: laundry, making lunch, reminding your kids to do their schoolwork, checking off committee items for the PTA, making sure everyone's clothes fit, and scheduling pediatrician appointments. While these tasks may need to be done, this exercise can give us permission to spend less time on these activities. Often the things we think we must do are simply because we always have done them or others around us do them and we think we should too.
Such a perspective creates unnecessary stress when we do these tasks late, make errors, or ask for help. And basically she says, repeat this exercise for as many areas as you think is, helpful and necessary. And it kind of goes on with that. And I'll just read the last paragraph. Life is not about racking up a list of accomplishments, which is ironically what you're doing here, but she's right. What you can stop doing to make more time for yourself, make more time for joy, and use your time more meaningfully. The next time you set a goal or decide you want to improve upon an area of your life or simply alleviate some of the pain that area is causing you, remember to go for subtraction instead of addition. Revel in the joy of doing less. So there you have it. Doing less, figuring out that's really all she's suggesting, is figuring out like what's working for you and what isn't. I mean, it kind of sounds like Marie Kondo or whoever that is, that like, what brings you joy, and like, it's a minimalist approach to doing things in life, like, or to tasks, to what you need to get done. It's kind of taking minimalism and pointing it at that. I feel like this is kind of a practice of pruning, where like, if you don't prune the bush, it's going to grow out of control. Yep.
Because as you go about your daily life, especially if you're a productive person with a lot of energy, a real go-getter, like some of these entrepreneurial mothers, you'll probably end up finding things throughout your life that you feel that you could do to improve your life and those around you, and like achieve something that you want to get done.
Right.
So you just keep adding more responsibilities to your life. And that can be a real challenge, especially if you don't have somebody around that you can delegate to, which is why I'm so glad that you're so helpful to me, because I know that I can ask you for help and it doesn't cause me extra stress, right. Which is what this article was saying, is like, for some people, it does cause them stress to ask for help because they feel personally responsible for getting all of this stuff done.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes vice versa as well. I mean, it's great to have like an actual helpful partner in life.
Yeah, exactly.
With a lot of these things, that's for sure. And if you can like delegate tasks, you're not delegate, but like, you could take on something, I take on something.
Yeah.
And it works out for both of us.
And it seems like these practices she's outlining were kind of just like trimming back on some of those responsibilities. If they're not giving you the results you want, forget about it. You don't have to do it. Yeah.
I want to add on to this because I think for a lot of us, our tasks are wrapped up. This is where a tech angle comes in. Our tasks are wrapped up in a browser tab. And I don't mean that it's a to-do list in a browser tab. I mean that you have a million browser tabs open that requires some kind of action or that you think requires some kind of action on your part. Whether it's something you need to download, whether it's something that you want to read, or it's an email or whatever the fuck it is. Something that I find really helpful, it's not drawing a circle or anything like that and seeing which is like actually helpful or something like that, is, and I hate the fact that a lot of browsers are trying to backpedal on this, and they have been for years, bookmark folders.
Mm-hmm.
And just bookmark shit. Okay.
Or close all of your tabs, and if it's really that important, you will reopen it.
Yeah, right. You could do that too, yes. But I think bookmarking it, and then you can close it. And like you could make one that says like Saturday reading list, right? And you could just, whatever you want to read, like you have a set time where you're going to read those stories maybe that you saved, and you put them into that folder. Now, the irony is you'll probably never touch that folder, ever. For the rest of your life, you're never going to touch it. It's going to keep adding in stories, but you're never going to read them.
Well, unless you really plan to make time to read them, like you planned to make that bookmark folder.
Right, right.
And it was just a tiny bit of extra effort that you put in to create that organization so that you could save yourself from the stress and anxiety of all that chaos.
Yeah.
But you could probably like increase your feeling of achievement if you actually did start reading some of those things.
True. But I think too, I mean, I don't know. And I'm pretty sure you feel the same way, but like the more tabs I see open, I mean, that gives me a sense of nervousness, and like that just adds on to, I feel like I need to do more.
Agreed.
Yeah, right. And so I think ways of eliminating that is very helpful. But I think also like engaging the practice that Kate here lays out in HBR, link is in the show notes for people if they want to try it out. Even just seeing everything you do can be really helpful. Like, I mean, it's almost like a browser tab of like seeing all these different tabs of what you do. And then you go, holy shit. Like if you ever feel bad about yourself, like, take a look at that. Like, wow, I did a lot, today or something like that. And it's granted, it takes time to do this, practice and all that. But then also it does help you eliminate a lot of processes. It helps you eliminate a lot of things that you just, maybe once you finally realize, wow, that didn't help with anything, you just don't do it anymore, but we're so go that we don't even pay attention to the fact. We don't even realize that something we spent 3 hours on yesterday wasn't helpful at all. We're just so used to doing it that we don't pay any attention to it.
Yeah, it's so crazy. People are in such a rush that they don't even pay attention to what is helping them and what isn't,
right,
as long as they're just doing something.
Right. And it's not until you label it, write it down and see what it is and how it affects you that And I think that's just as true for like with the browser tabs and creating bookmark folders, because it gets to the point you don't even know what the browser tab is, unless you recognize what the little icon is, maybe because like there's no room for any text on it, for fuck's sake.
Oh, and the worst part is when you like have tabs open that you go back to click on them and you've been logged out of some profile and you have to like relog back in to see what it is. That's so annoying. Just get rid of it. Just close it.
Yeah,
come back to it later when you're ready.
Yeah, or bookmark it and close it. But I mean, bottom line being, once it's labeled, even with the bookmark folder, I think that also is another way of sort of, it's that labeling like you're doing in the circles of what actually works and what doesn't.
Yeah,
or
don't
what's
leave
important
this
and what's
stuff
not.
as like random chaos.
Yeah.
It needs to go in categories.
Exactly.
So that way you know what you're facing.
Yeah.
And, something she says in this article that I absolutely agree with, be ruthless. Like, when you make these lists, you chop them down.
Yeah.
Like, you have to really get to the core of what you want to do, what's meaningful to you, and what helps you achieve those things. And if you really want to be happy, just do those. Don't do any of the other useless stuff. Like, I know you've even had this problem recently. You've talked to me about it, where you feel that there are so many things that you want to do. There's just so much that you want to read. You don't have time for all of it. And, like, I've had to come to this hard realization that if I want to make it through college, I have to give up literally everything besides being a college student.
Right.
And that was really hard for me. But now I understand the process. Like, I can't do art. I can't do writing. I have to just focus on doing schoolwork. And that's what I have to sacrifice those other things if I want to achieve in this area in my life. And I know it's temporary. And I think I can handle the burden of giving up that stuff for now so that I can achieve those things. And, like, I'm trying to explain this to you, but you just have, like, you have so many other projects that I never even considered having. So I don't know how you choose what to cut out of your life and what you choose to focus on.
See, so, and you're totally on, and I can completely verify that that's exactly, especially the past few months, is exactly what you've done. Is you're just like, okay, I'm a fucking college student. Like, everything else, goes to the wayside. Now, that takes a strength and courage in itself to do what you do, so I'm not in any way saying that it doesn't. It's helpful when there's an end, like that when you know what the light at the end of the tunnel is, right? Like there's a point where the semester ends. There's the point where, I mean, you're not guaranteed results, certainly,
right.
but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. The problem with a lot of creative projects, or even if you're employed in a field that requires a lot of creativity and does not have more or less guaranteed results. And what I mean by guaranteed results is that, okay, like when I used to be a technician, okay, at like a tech company, I get a unit in that I need to repair. Okay, I know what to do. And they're like, I replaced the motherboard. I put in a new hard drive. Boom, she's done. She's out. And it's all set.
But with a lot of things, you can do the work and not see the results.
Yeah, I mean, that's a guaranteed result. I know what work has to be done. Is if I do the work, the result is guaranteed. If I replace the motherboard and the motherboard's because the motherboard's bad, I have a guaranteed result, right? With creative pursuits, or if you're reaching out to journalists and it's like, hey, would you like to, include my client in your story or something like this? There's no guarantees, but you have to get results of some kind. And that is so stressful when there are no guaranteed results on your work and it's all a crapshoot. Or with creative pursuits where you are creating an entire world or something like that, you don't know where it's going to end. The book could be 8 chapters, could be 20, and you don't know, and you just keep going. And sometimes it seems so unmanageable. With creative work, it really is a different game, and it's incredibly stressful, and it's tough to sometimes want to take it on because, again, like if you just had some kind of guaranteed result, you'd feel better about it. And you'd probably be, okay, I'll go in because as long as I do X, Y, Z, we're good.
Yeah. And for things like that, I suppose it's incredibly important to acknowledge the intrinsic motivation for those projects.
Absolutely.
What are your values? What do you love? What is it you want out of this? What are you hoping to achieve? And even just keeping that in mind, I think can help overcome a lot of those barriers.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're totally right. That's why,
even if you're afraid of starting. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the life, I've been in sales for tech companies and things too. Boy, that's you got to meet those quotas. And that's, I don't ever really want to be into that again. I've said it a million times. I wish I could just go, work in a quarry. Where it's like, okay, yeah, maybe you didn't find as much copper today as you should, or I don't know, whatever the fuck, they're going for, the quarry, the granite, I don't know. But you put it in, you went through this, and even that is still like a result. Just something where like you do X, Y, Z and you've provided value as long as you do X, Y, Z. I kind of miss that sort of work, but a lot of, that's another thing too. And I don't want to get too far off topic on this, but I feel like the internet has really changed a lot of that to where that kind of guaranteed result work is now basically all automated. And a lot of the jobs left have either morphed into where, yeah, you don't have the guaranteed result. And, if you don't get results, regardless of how hard you worked, well, too bad, you're done.
So that's interesting. So like the dilemma of guaranteed versus non-guaranteed results kind of changes the definition of productivity.
Ooh, tell me more.
Well, productivity in itself,
yes.
Productive, produce, you're making something that is valued, that is needed.
Right.
But what if you're making something that nobody wants? Is that being productive?
I see what you're saying. I see what you mean. Yeah, that is a huge, huge point. Is that actually, and that's part of why I think a lot of people are so fucking stressed out, because it's not even productivity in the first place, because there's really no guarantee, man, there's a huge subject I want to get into, about like bullshit jobs and all this other stuff, but I'm not going to go there.
Can we say that PR is a bullshit job?
Oh, man.
Is that acceptable to say?
It is a wizardry.
It's a sales tactic.
I think
it's propaganda.
I said it. Yes, it is. I said it last week. I hope nobody ever wants to become a journalist or a reporter or, if you're like a Lois Lane kind of reporter, and you're reporting on, this X and Y and Z, what happened. Okay, fine. Like I
think it'd be fascinating to be a journalist.
Yeah. Well, that there's value in that, but all right. People don't understand what's going on right now. Okay. Like, actually I just saw a story on Windows Central the other day. some, I don't know, 300, or I mean, just like MSN is firing journalists right and left. And what are they doing? They're having AI do it.
What?
Yeah, they're having AI do, and this, I talked about this recently. I said that I think AIs are writing script, novels, all kind, or algorithms, whatever. Like they're writing all this shit.
Okay, but what about the journalists that travel to Africa and get the scoop on what's happening in the local government, where they're giving out the single, legal ticket for the year so that somebody can shoot a black rhino? Clearly
an AI cannot do that. And that is, but you see, that's a guaranteed result. Okay, this is going on. We know this is going on. Go find the story. Go get the story. Okay. And write it. But you're just writing what happened. You know what I mean? And you have to be there, and maybe you're putting your, stylistic flair upon it. You as a great writer, right?
Yeah, well, as a great writer, you have to add in some sort of reflection on another aspect of the world, like the rhino example. That could be put into the category of conservation and how that fits into that whole effort.
Right. But see, here's the thing. So, I hear you. There are millions, if not billions, of websites on the internet, and all of these have Alexa rankings. Okay, now I mean it's Alexa owned by Amazon, but not like, hey Alexa. Okay, and everybody's competing for higher Alexa rankings. Everybody wants the clicks, right? That gets the impressions on the ad, and then people get a payday. Okay. You have businesses that started, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, whatever. And these writers, look, there are amazing things that happen in the world, but you have to be Carl Sagan basically to explain half of the amazing things that happen in the world. Ultimately, minus, the interesting times that we are in right now, as far as what's going on with, the big things that are going on right now, and you know what they are. Ultimately, life is fairly boring. Ultimately, because the flip side of what's going on with this is that a lot of people actually try to fill in their day with stuff to justify their meaning and existence in their own minds. Okay. And that's where, your point about doing what you intrinsically want to do is so key, and finding out who you really are. I mean, that's a huge problem we have with humanity in general, is most human beings have no idea who they are in the first place. And I don't mean who they are as a human being. I mean who they are as an individual. They have no idea. Okay. These writers have to come up with stuff to write about that people will click on. Okay. I mean, it's classic shit. This is what tabloids have done forever. It's just the internet case of it. But now you multiply what Weekly World News and National Enquirer was doing for decades. Multiply that by 1 million. And that's what you've got, on the internet.
That's horrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not have algorithms do it? And then genuine humans can write the really interesting and high quality stories.
Sure. Yes. Okay. But for the past 20 years, you have set a precedent that there are millions of websites to write for. And that means that there are millions of jobs out there. Okay. And then you have the PR industry who has to try and, it's to the point right now where PR representatives, not the journalists, the other side, who represent the clients who might have something interesting going on, they are coming up with the stories for the writers, because the writers are in that bad of a spot because of, COVID-19, the protests, and everything else. They could write about that stuff, but how much are they going to write about? And then people, fall out of that. They don't know what else to possibly even write about. They are out of ideas, and they're getting fired right and left because also algorithms are coming up with everything and writing all this stuff out. It's just, there are a lot of jobs that are just completely disappearing, and everybody's been warning about this, that automation is taking away a lot of jobs, but I don't think they realize that where the automation is really taking the jobs, and it's not, automation isn't just taking the jobs away, say necessarily from the factory worker. In fact, even that isn't happening as much as people think, because there's some really fine-tuned stuff, especially when new technologies come in, where you really need the human touch. Automation is killing the internet jobs, which have been the massive boom in the economy for the past 20 years. And I don't mean the .com boom. I mean after that.
Because people are so predictable that algorithms can make interesting stuff to us.
Yeah, all you gotta do, because you don't care if people actually read the shit. You're just trying to get them to click on the link and get the ad impressions. Like it doesn't really matter, and so because because that making that clickbait story does not have a guaranteed result. If you can pass that buck onto an algorithm or AI to do it to where you don't have to pay them, and that way, if you don't get the result, it doesn't matter. It's bad.
So what does it mean for an AI to be creatively productive?
Wow, that's getting metaphysical.
Okay, so journalists are not productive, is what you're saying. PR is not productive.
Yeah, most 99% of journalists are pointless jobs. In fact, I'd almost say they are malicious to human civilization. Because I mean, what the hot trending stories that I've seen on Twitter even now often enough are like some pop star doesn't know how to wash dishes. Who gives a fuck? Like that's a story, I mean, and
there are still some reputable journalistic institutions, I think, out there that write long-form articles that are genuinely informative and interesting.
Yeah, sure. The Guardian does. I mean, even whether or not it's all, like 100% reality. I don't want to say it's not the truth. I think it's somebody's truth. But whether or not it's 100% the reality of the situation, yes, they do amazing long-form content that is incredibly valuable and great analysis, or at least food for thought, even if you disagree with it. Absolutely, yes. But that's so few and far between. Like, because that's not, it's the same problem on YouTube, right? Where what does YouTube promote? The fucking crazy, it promotes the wild, the weird. It does not promote, and the excitable. It does not promote the calm and the rational. Like that's not going to get you. I know, guys. I just did a YouTube special, and granted, everybody I talked about there are largely fairly fairly popular. Okay, but I know guys. I mean, there's guys we've met at events who are brilliant. I don't agree with them all the way, but like they're fucking brilliant. I recognize that, and they're lucky if they can get 1,000 followers on YouTube. They should have 2 million. Because at the very least, they're incredibly rational. They're very well researched, well read, and they at least present evidence of some kind, and they get jack shit, and so. But
if they if for the thumbnail on their video,
they put the crazy face on.
If they put an emoji,
yeah,
like a laughing face emoji with the tears coming out on the side, maybe they would get a few thousand more views.
But just, I mean, like that's such crap, you're totally right. And I brought that point up on the special too. You're 100% right. But I mean, this is, I think you raised an absolutely brilliant point, is that the bulk of the jobs that exist today couldn't even be labeled, if we wanted to get Randian about it. We couldn't even call them productive achievement. I mean, they wouldn't even come up as that.
Or at least the productivity would vary from day to day, even if you were putting in a consistent effort.
Yeah. We're in a very fucked up situation. And
that's why it's so much more important to focus on what actually makes you happy.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. I obviously I completely agree. The hard part is that, you got to survive. Right. But I think that's actually the other side of this, and what this exercise that we talked about from HBR here is, that maybe it can help you get to the core of who you are and what you really want. I bring this point up all the time on the show. You've got to be able to answer the question, what do I want? if you don't have a really high precision answer for that. And it has to be for you. It can't be for someone else. It can't be for frankly, it can't even be for your family.
Or for your boss.
Yeah, it's got to be, what do you want? When you can answer that question, then I think you might not even need this little task. Or you can write all this stuff down and you'll be able to, go at it with a katana
the thing
lot faster.
Yeah, this really, I think, is a helpful process because it can help you put, especially for people who have a sort of like 3-dimensional thinking method.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's some people who are very linear with their thoughts, very clear and concise. And then there's some people who are just, scatterbrained all over the place, like going in multiple directions at once. So like for those kinds of people, this really makes it concrete. Like in each specific area of your life, this is what's important to you. And this is what you can do to enhance those results.
Right.
And I think there's a one step in here that said something about how it's really important to make a list of your successes or your wins, even if they're little things. And I think the author is totally right that like people are not told to, celebrate their victories.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Even if they are small. And
right.
I think that that's really important to at least give yourself some acknowledgement if other people aren't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that can be a real self-esteem and mood booster. Mm-hmm. Is just saying like, yeah, I did good on that. Or that was a really solid job.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with that too, is that we're really, modesty gets pushed on us a little too hard, and well, anyway. Yeah. Do less. I mean, I just hear that and I think it makes sense, like just, all right, cut away some things and maybe get more at the core of who you are and where you want to go. Something I really notice a lot is that, and someone had to highlight this for me, but I think it's a great point, especially when you're online. Anything you say, you're almost guaranteed to get some kind of haters or something.
Oh, of course.
That are going to come after anything that you happen to say. And the point that the person brought up to me was that most people don't like themselves. Why are you worried about what they're saying about you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is such a huge concept to internalize and to take in, and pay attention to that. And I think that speaks to, you find out who you are, and get to the core of who you are and what you want. And then none of that stuff really matters because then you're really achieving your happiness. You're becoming who you want to be, and so on. And then, and that's the ultimate in productivity, I suppose, is becoming who you want to be.
And I think this list is really helpful in doing that and helping you figure out who you are and who you want to be. I'm a huge fan of journaling. Like I've had a personal journal since I was 15 years old.
Yeah.
Actually, no, 13. But it's really shown me over the years that sometimes I have blind spots, and reflecting on certain things that you write out can show you can like sometimes have these sudden discoveries about yourself.
Yeah.
Like you might not know that you really want to do this in life. Like you might feel it, but if you don't take the time to really focus on that feeling, you won't know what it's trying to tell you until you write it out. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. That's another helpful thing. It's just, there's just so much to distract us today. Anything we can do like this to really hone down, what we really want, what we want to be, and what's actually helpful for us, going forward. There's just too much distraction. There's just way too much distraction. Everything's trying to take your attention away, and just pare that shit down,
Yeah, know it's important and stick to that.
Yeah. So doing less, that'll give you your focus. So
yeah,
I think
it'll give you like an artistic and detailed perspective, I think.
Yeah.
Like that's really the main benefit of doing less, is that you can do what you do better.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. There it is. So anyway, we have gone well over 2 hours.
You don't want to talk about another article?
Maybe not another article. I do want to get into something quick though, really fast. Okay. You and I, and this is for fun, so we can end on a good fun note here. You and I have started watching, we finished Enterprise.
Yeah.
Star Trek Enterprise, which that's the first time you've gotten through that entire series, right?
Yes, it is. I watched up to season 1 or season 2. I don't remember.
Previously, yeah.
Yeah, but this is the first time I've seen the entire series.
What did you think of it?
Well, it's certainly different from other Star Trek.
Yeah, not different like Picard and Discovery, where it's like,
no,
no.
I don't count that as part of the Star Trek universe.
Ooh, dangerous words. Okay.
Well, people can say that it is, but it's not.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's fan
like
fiction.
it's not even on the same level.
Yes.
So anyway, Star Trek Enterprise. It's there are a lot of things that happen in it which I find morally questionable, and I don't think the characters in the series really acknowledge what the full implications of what have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels kind of like Wild West Star Trek, more so than even the original series.
Right.
Which I think in Voyager...
Which is kind of the idea, because it's a prequel to it. But
right.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I think in Voyager, Janeway said something about Captain Kirk and how that
cowboy.
Enterprise... Yeah, it was like he was Wild West. There were no rules.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think Enterprise is more that.
Yeah.
Because they don't even have the Prime Directive.
Yeah, not yet. Yeah.
They don't have any morals. They don't have any guidelines. They're just out searching for new life.
Yeah, so it's different. But I mean, it still feels Star Trek, right? And it still fits the... Yeah,
it's still... there's great character development and story arcs with the characters. They still explore deep philosophical questions. And there's just a lot of variety and diversity in the species that they encounter. And,
sure.
The situations that they have to deal with.
Yeah, so you enjoyed it. You liked it overall. I mean, you'd recommend people check it out.
Yeah, I was always excited to watch it.
Yeah.
There were a few episodes that I actually cried at.
Yes.
Admittedly.
Yeah.
It was like 2 or 3 nights in a row. I felt so bad about it.
Yeah, they were all kind of tearjerkers.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. Well, all right, let me ask this. Did you want to mention the episode or?
No, it's okay.
Okay. Favorite character of the series? T'Pol or Phlox?
Dr. Phlox.
Yeah, Phlox is so great.
Yeah. I mean, T'Pol just didn't get she could have been the most interesting character if they had presented her as more than just a Vulcan character. Yeah. I guess she was unique in the fact that she was a Vulcan that could tolerate being around humans.
Yeah.
Okay. She was addicted to meth. Okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually meth, but it was kind of
idea.
similar.
Sure.
That was an interesting story arc in itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a lead that they could have taken where she was saying like, I'm finally discovering what it means to be Vulcan. And they didn't take advantage of that.
I think if they had more time, they could have. But yeah, I hear you.
But she was just a Vulcan character, you know? And there were some interesting personal moments for her.
Yes.
Which is good. But Dr. Phlox was just so full of like vitality and fun, and he had these like words of wisdom, and he knew solutions to everything, and he was very strong with his medical ethics.
Yeah. Yep.
I was always happy whenever he was in an episode.
Yeah. No, it's amazing how often in Star Trek the Doctor characters like really shine. and become at some point, like the EMH in Voyager was tremendous.
Yeah.
He's a great character. I think McCoy delivered some of the best lines in Star Trek history. War is never inevitable. There's just so many great things that he ever had. Dr. Crusher, just go down the list. They're all pretty awesome.
Sure, and in some ways they carry just as much, if not more, responsibility than the captain.
Yeah, you really have to have a great Doctor character, because they can have more responsibility than the captain, but also they can always override the captain, right? And you always know that. So you want a character that has to have the strength that you believe that if needed, they could basically, unseat the captain. And that's not an easy thing to write when you have such powerful captain characters, but Star Trek somehow always really pulls that off. And I always felt like Phlox, if he needed to, and there's times where he absolutely got in Archer's face, and said, "Hey, like this goes against all my medical ethics. I'm not doing this." Which is, there's other times where it kind of went the other way too, but
yeah,
regardless, powerful character. I agree.
Yeah, he was so much fun, and he was a very powerful character. And they did even use him to introduce like alternative relationship styles to the show.
Yes, right, because they're polyamorous, yeah, or polygamous or whatever.
Yeah. They each have like 3 husbands and 3 wives.
Yeah. Just an interesting take and a great reflection on humanity at that time and helping it grow and become eventually, at least what the Next Generation put on display anyway. So now we switched from that. Okay. I'm going to very quickly something from a listener here from the Telegram group.
Okay.
But we switched from that. After we were done with that, we're like, I convinced you. I twisted your arm gently and said, no, not Next Generation. I know you want to watch that next. How about we watch Babylon 5? How about we take a little bit of a break from Star Trek, just for a little bit? And we did start watching that. Now, before I talk about that, I want to read this here quick. So this is from the Telegram group. And he was saying that he loved our episode, the last episode we did, episode 375. He says, I also agree with you guys that I actually love the pre-action parts of movies like Jurassic Park and Andromeda Strain. I like the hard stuff, LOL.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ellen does too.
I do.
Because of my because of my belief that quote unquote alien intelligence is likely so alien to us, I have a hard time suspending disbelief for Star Trek or Star Wars, where almost all aliens are bipeds who speak English and are roughly 2 meters tall, breathe oxygen, etc.
Yeah, it is pretty strange, isn't it? They're all humans with funny foreheads or green skin.
Yeah, and are usually technologically equivalent to the humans in said fiction. It's the curse of UAP geekdom, LOL. I thought that was an interesting point for him to bring up. We could actually have a whole conversation around that, really. Would humans or would aliens actually look that different from us, etc. But it is a great point. I mean, Star Trek in itself, in Enterprise, even fell prey to this, where you basically end up with forehead of the week. That's what they used to call it,
Yeah.
because they would just change something on your forehead, and you're an alien.
They kind of fixed that with the Xindi, where they had the 4 different races of Xindi.
That's true. Like the insectoids and the aquatics were very different species. I think the
reptilians and the sloths.
Yeah, actually, the sloths was such an interesting choice with the Xindi in season 3. But I think I just said we started watching Babylon 5. So and about liking the hard stuff. I feel like Babylon 5 is the hardest hard sci-fi where it pays real attention to the science. I feel like Babylon 5 is the answer to that. Like, that is as hard a science fiction as you can fucking get. Like, even the Star Furies, like, all have thruster. Like, these things don't just move in space like, ooh, somehow they have a magical engine that can make them turn. Like, you see the thrusters all over the and they're not even really wings, but all over, like, the pylons that allow it to twist. Not all of the aliens are foreheads of the week. There's a lot of aliens that look very, very strange. Or like you have Nagrath, who's this really tall insect. And you have like Kosh is a very weird creature, and so on. So I think there's science fiction out there that, television science fiction that kind of answers that, of wanting that hard science fiction and where it spends time kind of peacefully. So I guess I want to ask you quickly, so we don't have to go much longer, but I mean, so we're only in season 1 of Babylon 5, but what do you think of Babylon 5 so far?
I really love it.
Love it. Not like it. You
great.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. You're right. It does pay attention to the science.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they go into separate areas of the station where there's different atmospheric gases for the specific species that lives there, they have to put on gas masks to go in. Yeah, there's all sorts of strange characters and weird alien, and some of them are at very different stages in their technological development.
Yes, right. Like the humans know that they're kind of lower on the totem pole in comparison to some of the races that they deal with. Yes.
And while Star Trek has always been great for having beautiful moments, really insightful moments, great quotes, I feel like you get that every episode with Babylon 5.
Yes.
There's always something that's like incredibly inspirational and beautiful, and it's amazing to think that somebody wrote this and it exists, and it like the characters are so strong and well defined.
Yeah. Well, you were even saying, you said tonight after the episode that we watched, you're like, you love how the show never ends when you expect it to. There's always like a little epilogue or something that you get to enjoy.
Yeah, and I suppose that's just a product of me growing up in like the late 90s and 2000s. All the shows that I've ever watched, it seems like they end like as soon as there's a resolution to the main plot of the story, it ends. But I think with Babylon 5, it gets me every time where I think like, okay, this is the ending scene. It's going to end because they finally got the resolution.
Yeah.
But there's always another scene. And I'm pleasantly surprised every time where it's an extended resolution where it's not just like the solution to the main thrust of the story, but you also kind of get to see what happens afterwards.
Yeah, because, I feel like I felt the exact opposite thing during Enterprise a lot, I'll admit. And I love Enterprise. I think Enterprise is a great show. But there are a lot of times where the episodes just end as soon as the action is resolved.
And you have to assume what happens afterwards.
Yeah, and I miss it because, like, Next Gen and original series, you always had like the moral tale at the end, where Spock and McCoy are on each side of Kirk and Kirk is laying out, whatever shit he wants to spew. And Picard might do the same thing in the ready room. And,
it's like Aesop's fables.
Yeah, right. And I love that. And Babylon 5 delivers that every time. And you're right. You don't expect it. But it is such a nice, it's the cherry on top. Right. And yeah, I'm glad you're really enjoying the show, especially season 1, because the hype when somebody tells you they love Babylon 5 and they they're like, oh, you have no idea how great this is. The thing is they start watching season 1. I said this many times, but they start watching season 1 and they're like, I don't get it. What's the big deal? And now you're loving season 1.
Yeah, I think there are no throwaway characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like every character in every story plays a significant role.
Right.
It's not like they're there just to be their usual selves or whatever. They're not just like standing at the console like they always are. Right.
Yeah, I think most people sell it on the epicness and everything, but the epicness doesn't come until later. But you don't buy the epicness. You don't believe the epicness. You don't accept it until you get the foundation laid in season 1 with all these characters. That's part of what makes it so amazing as the show, goes on later on. And so it's kind of a victim of its success. Not that it was necessarily a successful show, unfortunately. It's a victim of its success in that when people talk about it, they talk about how amazing it is, but you don't get that sense of that level of amazing in season 1, as good as season 1 is. But that's part of why I wanted you to talk about it, because you're catching it right now. You've never seen it before. You're catching it season 1, and even season 1, you're fucking loving. So I'm hoping that's going to convince more people.
Yeah, no, I listen to these characters interacting and the way that the shots are filmed, they're given enough time to where they can say and express what they really feel.
It can breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they do it in such a way that it really resonates and it doesn't feel rushed.
Right.
It feels like you're really there. And it just gives me the sense of like, this is what I want life to be like.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I guarantee it's just going to get better. So anyway, we'll do, I'm sure at some point we'll do like a full, or maybe every time that you're on, maybe we'll do a little Babylon 5 update. Like, what do you think about it now? You know,
Sure.
And we'll kind of go from there. Because I mean, it's just such, when there is, in my opinion, so much crap as far as entertainment goes. And since like right now, actually, there's not a lot of new stuff getting made. If people have the time to go back to the old stuff, this is one that everybody should watch, in my opinion. It's, you know, even answering the listener, his message, you know, about how he likes the hard stuff. This is the hard stuff, but it's also something that we can all relate to because it, you know, approaches the human condition in such a great way. So anyway, I think we should wrap this baby up. We're at about 2.5 hours here. So
yeah, let's do it.
And we've got some fun to have, I think, you know. So Ellen, thank you as always for being on.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, always a pleasure. This episode took some twists and turns I did not expect, but I think very valuable points getting brought up. Which is, anyway.
Would you say we've been productive?
I would say this is very productive.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I love it.
But we have other things to do, so let's move on.
Yes, let's be horizontally productive. Here we go. All right, everyone. We will see all of you on the other side.
Woo!
Thank you for listening to Sovryn Tech, an Osiris One production. Now go out there and make some trouble.